Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Nate English, and this is going to be a short video about hydration and how that affects our performance and what we can do about it. I think most of us are well aware that our bodies are about 2/3 water, and any significant loss of that fluid content has a negative impact on our performance. But I think not everyone knows exactly like how much water we lose, how much salt we lose with our sweat, and how much we should drink in order to combat that, in order to try to perform our best and take care of our bodies. So I just want to talk about some of those things today. So let's do it. Before I get into too much detail, if I was going to just try to boil everything down to a few basic tips, I would say, if you're training for shorter periods of time, less than an hour or so, and it's not super intense, don't worry about your hydration that much. Just drink whatever's comfortable and available. Water is fine, drink mix is fine, don't sweat it. But if your training session is longer, it's more intense, it's in warmer weather conditions, and it might be a couple hours or several hours long, definitely make sure that you drink 1.5 to 2 bottles per hour. Probably not more than that, but definitely don't drift below the 1 bottle per hour mark. So start drinking early and keep it consistent throughout your training session, and make sure that you're getting electrolytes in your body, whether you're eating salty snacks or you're drinking drink mix or you're taking some sort of noon electrolyte only type tablet and putting that in your water. It's really crucial for water balance, and it'll help you out. But now we can get into maybe a little bit more detail on these topics. So when we're exercising, we're burning a lot of fuel to do physical work, whether we're running or cycling or swimming. Most of the chemical energy that we break down while we're doing whatever exercise we're doing, only about 1/4 of that is actually converted into physical work. A little bit more than 3/4 of it is actually wasted as heat. And so that produces a lot of extra heat in our bodies, and we warm up, and I'm sure you all know, as we warm up, we start to sweat in order to maintain a comfortable and appropriate core body temperature. That's a great mechanism that allows us to keep performing at a high level for a long period of time. And as we get fitter, our bodies get much more efficient at sweating earlier when we exercise and sweating at higher and higher rates. But that creates a problem, because the longer we exercise, the more heat we create and the more water we have to dump into the environment as sweat in order to maintain a comfortable core temperature. So in order to keep exercising, we can't just sweat indefinitely. We're going to run out of fluid at some point, and as our bodies lose fluid, we start to see a loss of performance. So we need to combat that by drinking. So how much do we sweat? On the low end, if it's pretty cool out and you're not exercising very hard, you'll probably sweat and expire air that has a lot of moisture from your lungs at a rate of maybe like 1/2 liter per hour or maybe 1 liter per hour. That's not a lot of fluid, but it is enough that it adds up over time. You can lose several liters of water over the course of a long ride. So just for the sake of illustration, this is a 16-ounce bottle of fluid, or about 1/2 liter, and so this is kind of the low end of how much fluid you could lose while you're exercising. On the high end, as you get fitter, if you're exercising very intensely in very warm weather, you can sweat a lot more than that. Back in the 80s, when Alberto Salazar was still an active runner and he was training for the Olympic marathon in Mexico City, I think they did some studies on him, and he, I think, has currently, from what I've seen, the highest recorded sweat rate in history. He was sweating while he was training at a rate of about 3.6 liters per hour. Also, for the sake of illustration, this is a gallon jug. This is 3.78 liters. So, given that information, I think it's, safe to assume that a world-class athlete training in very warm conditions who is very fit can potentially sweat close to 1 gallon per hour of fluid. And that's really incredible. Especially considering the fact that there's no way that you could ever replace fluids at even close to that rate. That's a huge range of possible fluid loss per unit of time. On the low end, maybe a pound of water or about 1/2 kilo of water per hour. On the high end, almost 1 gallon. Probably most of the time, for most of us, will be more in the 1 liter to 2 or 2.5 liter range. Maybe for those of us who are a little bit fitter, probably 3 liters is not to be unexpected. But that just gives you a pretty decent idea of like how much fluid you might sweat per hour of exercise. It's good to be aware that along with the water that we're sweating, there's a lot of electrolyte loss. There are some amounts of magnesium and potassium and calcium that are lost in our sweat, but the biggest thing by far, the most important thing that we need to be concerned about and aware of is the sodium that we lose. That's what we lose in the highest concentrations, and that is pretty integral to our body's nervous system function and our body's water balance. The rate at which we lose salt varies pretty significantly from person to person. It depends a lot on how fit you are and how efficient you are at sweating, because as people get fitter and more efficient at sweating, they tend to sweat more water with lower concentration of sodium. But it seems like probably the biggest impact to how much salt we lose in our sweat is how much salt is in our diet. Both of those things factor in, and it's kind of hard to know exactly how much you as an individual might sweat. It's safe to say that it's going to be in the ballpark of maybe 1 gram of sodium per liter, or for every couple of pounds of water that you lose, you're also going to lose about 1 gram of salt. So if we lose 3 grams or 5 grams or 10 grams of sodium over the course of a long exercise session, if we only consume water, that's really going to be terrible for us because we're losing a ton of electrolyte and not replacing any of it. So it's really pretty key for warm weather conditions and longer training sessions to take in some sort of electrolyte drink mix. Pretty much any drink mix will have a few hundred milligrams of sodium per serving. I would try out different ones to see what tastes good to you and what seems to be well tolerated by your stomach. Some people do well with higher calorie drink mixes that have a lot more sugar and a sweeter taste. Some people really like drinks that have a very mild taste and don't really have much in them except for the salt. But whether you drink Gatorade or Scratch or Osmo or Goo Brew, they're all potentially going to do a pretty good job at facilitating good hydration and replacing some of the lost sodium that you will have as you sweat. So it's really good to be aware that you definitely need to drink to mitigate water loss and drink with electrolytes in order to mitigate too much sodium loss and the neurological dysfunction that can result from losing too much of that. So obviously we need to drink, that's pretty clear, and we want to replace some of our electrolytes that we lose, but how much can we drink and how much can we tolerate and make use of? So this is a 750 milliliter bottle. This is about 25 or 26 ounces of fluid. Most bike water bottles are going to be anywhere from 21 to 24 ounces. Some of them are a little bit bigger, like 25 or 26 ounces. That's only about 2/3 of a liter. So 2 bottles is maybe 1.5 liters. So that could be plenty in the winter. I mean, you could go through a bottle per hour and that'll be fine. I mean, you could ride forever like that. If it's hot out in the summertime, you might be losing 2 or 3 liters per hour, and even if you drink 2 bottles of fluid per hour, you're still going to be losing fluid. But generally speaking, for most people, that's going to be kind of the upper limit of how much fluid you can drink and absorb and not create stomach discomfort. Most people can tolerate a couple bottles per hour. Once you get past that, there's a quick drop off in who can tolerate that amount of fluid. The rate at which you absorb fluids is higher when there's some electrolytes and some carbohydrates in the fluid. So if you just drink water, that diffuses out of your stomach pretty passively. But if you drink water with carbohydrate, the sugars and the sodium that are in that drink mix will get actively transported out of your digestive system and take a lot of fluid with it. That's part of the reason that drink mixes are so good for you, is that they facilitate much better gastric emptying and facilitate better hydration, because you can absorb more fluid more quickly and you retain it better because of the sodium that's in there. A lot of times if it's really warm out, I might mix 1 bottle of fluid that is a regular drink mix and then another bottle that's twice as strong. That way, maybe 40 to 50 minutes into my ride, when I finish off the first bottle, I can just stop, split the remaining fluid of double strength drink mix and put it into the 2 bottles and top them both off with water, and then I'll have 2 bottles of drink mix and maybe I'll do the next hour and a half of riding before I fill up again. I would definitely also suggest taking like Noon tablets or Goo electrolyte tablets. Both of them are just little like salt tablets basically that are artificially sweetened and flavored, so that you can just plop them into your drink mix bottles when you're out training and you get 3 hours into your ride and you just have some water fountain somewhere that you want to fill up your bottles with. I mean, if it's 90 degrees outside, you really want to make sure you have electrolytes with you, so you can just take a little canister with you and use that to refill your bottles. And it's nice too because you have a little bit of flavor to your water, and that can help encourage people to drink more as well, because generally speaking, most people tend to like drinking drink mix or something that has flavor at higher rates than just water, especially since you absorb the fluid more quickly. If you're just drinking water 3 hours into a ride, sometimes your stomach doesn't feel that great, and it's helpful to have it empty more quickly, so the electrolyte tablets can help with that. You can also try to make sure that your ride food, or if you're running, maybe like the gels that you take with you, make sure that they have some sodium in them, so that even if you are just drinking water, or maybe you aren't getting as much sodium in your drink mix as you would want, you can get a little bit extra from the ride foods that you have, whether those are bars or cookies or little rice cakes that you made. Just having a little bit of extra salt in there, it can be helpful. And of course, usually if you're out there for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, you're probably going to be snacking on something that has some carbohydrates, just so you have an ongoing source of fuel for your longer training sessions. In general, in most cases, we're always going to be sweating at a rate equal to or significantly greater than the rate at which we can drink and absorb fluids. So it's just good to, think about the conditions you're training in and how warm it's going to be, or the conditions you're racing in for that matter, and just think about how much fluid you're likely to lose over the span of time that you're going to be exercising. And if it's going to be a lot, just start drinking and hydrating right away. You might consider having some sort of preload product where you have extra fluids and electrolytes, mostly sodium, in the hours before your training session. But definitely don't delay taking in fluids. If it's really cool out and you're not exercising very intensely, it might be fine to just kind of drink as you feel thirsty and go through a bottle per hour, or maybe even a little bit less if it's in the winter and it's really cold out. But make sure that you are staying comfortable and staying hydrated. But if it's really hot out, you're sweating a ton, you're gonna lose more fluid than you can take in. So just start drinking right away and try to at least get a bottle per hour. I mean, realistically, if it's warm, you want to shoot for 1.5 to 2 bottles per hour. But no matter how well you try to hydrate in warm weather conditions, you're probably going to finish at least a little bit dehydrated. So also take that into account with whatever your post-ride or post-race or post-run nutritional strategy is, because a lot of times people are thinking about how much they want to eat, how much protein they want to get, how many calories of carbohydrate they want to get after their training session is done. But if you're really dehydrated, you definitely want to start by getting in some fluids as well as some calories, and then maybe transition into solid foods, because if you just take in solid foods and you're kind of dehydrated, it's not going to get digested as quickly, and you'll actually effectively be dehydrating your body even more, because you'll need to pull fluid from your circulatory system into your gut in order to digest those foods. If you eat solid foods but then you also drink with it, that's great because it'll help you digest those foods, but it won't hydrate you as quickly and it won't deliver calories as quickly as if you start with maybe a drink mix with some protein in it, or like a smoothie or something like that, and then you transition into solid foods after that. Probably my favorite, zero preparation, really easy to do solution to that is to get a large bottle, put some drink mix in there and put some protein powder in there, and then shake that up and have that be the start of my recovery routine. So that way I get some fluids, I get some electrolytes, I get some calories with protein and carbohydrates. So that's like a perfect way to, jumpstart rehydrating and recovery. Feel free to add salt to the food that you're eating if it doesn't already have a good amount of sodium in it. As a general, public health concern, some people don't want to have too much sodium, but as an athlete, it's really difficult to overconsume sodium if you're sweating a lot on a regular basis. So, if you're riding 5 or 6 days a week, or you run an hour a day, you really shouldn't be too concerned about adding salt to your food. Definitely talk to your doctor if you know that you have maybe some sort of blood pressure issues or anything else like that. But in general, if you're sweating out, grams of sodium every day, you can add grams of sodium to your food and it's not going to adversely affect you. In fact, it's actually really going to be good for you. So I think that's all I wanted to cover for this video. I really hope some of that is interesting information and maybe useful to you. I hope some of those tips can help you get more out of your training or your racing. And please go ahead and like this video if you thought it was useful, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this when I release new videos. And I really hope to use my experience and knowledge to help you get more out of your training and racing. So that's it for today, and I'll see you next time.